Louis Pelletier, how the heck are you?
Back up on my butt. That's what can't do.
All right, can you all hear us on there? Ralph, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
All right, thank you. Well, thanks everyone for meeting here. It's good to see you all in person. We'll just get started here on the agenda. The first thing on the agenda here is discussing fuel and fuel reserves. I asked Ralph to be here because obviously there's a growing concern of the rising costs of fuel and uncertainty that we're heading into right now in terms of availability and the rising cost of those fuels. I had met with Peter and Ralph a week or so ago to talk about potential options for storage to see if we could purchase a larger amount and have some stored. Hopefully keep some of those costs down while we can. There doesn't seem to be many options in that regard. Ralph, did you want to speak to kind of where we're at with that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right on the storage. We've tried, I tried to do something with Dead River and Dysarts both. They're in the same boat. I mean, all the municipalities are coming after them too. We really don't have anything on site that we can store diesel. We get it from Dead River and they give us a discount of 30 cents a gallon on it. And then I file a report at the end of the month and we get another 31 cents off a gallon for taxes. So we're right around $3.50 a gallon right now, even though the price is, I think today it went up to like $4.50. Through Dead River, I'm paying about $3.90 right now. So the only thing I can do is to try to hold the budget line, of course, is we've done this in the past, is just stop picking up snow. Only doing what's necessary in the town for plowing, and you know, we can lower our level of service a little bit to try to hold that budget line. That's about all I can do. It would cost quite a bit of money to put a above ground tank in for diesel fuel. We'd need about a 10,000 gallon tank. You're talking over $100,000 to do that. And the timing's just not right now to do something like that. So I don't know what other options we do have. As far as that's concerned, I've reached out to a few other places and they're pretty much in the same boat.
Well, thanks, Ralph. Yeah, one of the issues with doing an above ground tank or just a tank in general is not only sourcing a tank, which can take 6 to 8 months just to get one, but then all of the procedures, processes, applications through the DEP and everyone else to have site plans, to have an engineered plan and all. I mean, it's a very expensive, long process. So without having a tank already in place, we're basically looking at, you know, about a year and a lot of money to get a tank installed. A lot of them even require surveillance, video surveillance systems and things like that too. So it's unfortunate, but that basically means we're going to be at the whim of the markets moving forward. So we'll have to address that when budget season comes around. But that's where we're at. Any thoughts or comments on that? Mike?
Yeah, I just hate to see an overreaction right now. The market is what it is. The price is going to go up until such time as whatever happens in Ukraine is settled. And but like anything else, I wasn't very long ago, a number of years ago, that we were close to $4 a gallon gasoline, and then it dropped down, and then it got down to close to $2 a gallon. You can't plan for it. You just have to ride it out. And every year it gets, you know, you just do the best you can when, like you said, when budget season comes, when Ralph prepares his budget, when everybody that has to get gas prepares their budget. You know, we're fortunate we get rack credits for buying our gas. Dysarts gives us credit, a discount. Dead River gives us discount on diesel. So we we just have to do due diligence, and we've got a good guy in Public Works who is very conscientious about his budget and how it's operated. So I leave it in the hands of Ralph to know what he needs and what he doesn't need, and we'll just figure it out as far as the cost when budget time comes around.
Thanks, Mike. Any other thoughts?
The only other thought along those lines is, as long as you realize we're, I know, I don't know about Ralph, I'm not gonna speak for Ralph, but I know I'm gonna go over budget fuel.
Mhm.
You know, between gasoline and diesel fuel. Just so,
And this is
just
one of
so
those.
we're all
things-
aware, you know, that you don't have a choice.
Right.
Yeah.
And every year that I was on the council before, when it came budget time, I always would ask either Ralph or Tom or whoever, when you look at their line in the budget, when it's presented to the council, is that enough? I don't want you to scrape by. I want to make sure that it's enough to get you through the year. You know, that to me is more important than anything else, because the problem with it afterwards, if it's not enough and you go over, then you're dipping into the fund balance anyway. So I'd rather have too much than not enough.
Thanks, Mike. Any other thoughts on this?
Yes, just to give you a feel for, you know, the prices of fuel, back in 2020, I was paying $1.78 a gallon at Dead River for the town. July 2021, I looked at it again, it was $2.28 a gallon, which wasn't too bad. So from July 2021, it's been steadily going up. And of course, we've been watching it pretty close, but now we really don't know where it's gonna head, obviously, but just to give you a feel, this has been going on for a while. So it's nothing new that we haven't noticed, but there's a lot of uncertainty right now. We don't know where it's gonna end up. So just to give you a little background on the prices, the gasoline I buy from Dysarts, and I do have an above ground tank up here that supplies the town. And that is pretty reasonable. I have enough for about 6 months supply there. And I've already purchased that at a discounted price of $2.60 a gallon. So we're not too bad a shape in gasoline. It's just the diesel. It's the uncertainty right now.
Thanks, Ralph. Yeah, I feel it's important to bring these kind of issues up, you know, for the public to see and for all of us to be on the same page about, so we can expect these things. So I appreciate that background to it. And that we've also looked into options. Obviously, we don't have many, so we'll just have to address it, as we said before, in budget, and make sure that we plan for it. So thank you, Ralph. Appreciate that.
Mhm.
So the next item is the discussion on the fire station on the Elks land. Peter, if you go over to the Chrome, and if you can share the screen. All right, so this is basically a way that we can try and assign value to each lot in a objective way, that we can go through each one of the, I'm gonna move up there so we can use the mouse. I don't, can you all read it from there?
Yeah.
Okay.
My eyes are.
And so basically there's two sections to this. On the left-hand side, this is where we rank the importance of each issue. So there's any changes to the existing building plans we have, basically the cost that would be associated with that. How important being a central location is from 1 to 10. How important equipment accessibility is, training space, community feel and visibility, the cost of the land, multi-use investment, and also utility availability, which is also a cost if there's no available utility. The second portion of it is where we actually go through each one of them and rank them based upon each property's value. So there's 4 different options. There's 0, 1, 3, and 9. 0 means that there's basically minimum or minimal or no value. 1 is there's low value. 3 is it's moderate. 9 is it's very valuable in that regard. Are there any questions so far on this, or any disagreements with how it's laid out? All right. So as a group, I thought we'd do this together so we can discuss this and be on the same page. So we can start ranking the level of importance. We can start with the first one, changes to building plans. Obviously, we're looking at cost here and time. It would cost a pretty good amount of money to have an engineer re-engineer plans. And it will obviously take time. It'll be a whole RFP process that we have to go through, and then the time that it would take for them to actually complete the work. And it would have to be site specific. So we'll have to most likely do soil samples and other things like that to make sure that it would appropriately fit that lot and that it would be engineered for that lot specifically. So from 1 to 10, how important do we want to rank?
Excuse me,
Yes.
can I ask the chief a question about the current building plans?
Sure.
I don't know, I know we're going on plans that are like 20 years old. Is that correct? Can you just share what those plans look like that would be on that site, so we have a better understanding of what that looks like?
That plan, yeah, must be, yeah, it's gotta be a good 20 years old. But that plan is a doable plan. That's a good floor plan. I mean, would you change things? Yeah, you know, there's changes that could be made. Are there changes that need to be made? No.
Is it drive-through?
I'm sorry.
Is it a drive?
Yes, yes.
How much space would be needed considering setbacks? You know, like parking lot behind it and in front of it. How much space are we talking? I mean, that could limit where we can look.
Right. Well, you want to have, you know, in front and behind your building, you know, with the trucks you've got right now, you want to have 50 to 100 feet anyway.
Yeah, I was thinking.
New ones, you know, I know, you know, we need to talk about what's going to happen down the road, you know, with a ladder truck or with, you know, with other pieces of equipment, with airport equipment. I would want a 200-foot barrier, front and rear, like a that way that gives you plenty of room to get in and around, you know, move your vehicles around and get in and out.
So that was a square outside dimensions of the building. You're talking a lot. What's the 100 on the 10? And the building itself is 100. Watching 400 straight, you know, one length of space you need.
So basically, have you seen the plans?
Not in detail.
Have you
I've
seen
seen
the
that there's plans.
You haven't, neither have I. We're making assumptions on something we haven't even seen yet. I would suggest before such time is worried about modification or how to go ahead and do this, I would want to see the existing plans. If they've been around 20 years, I'll tell you truthfully, I haven't laid eyes on them yet.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly not going to go ahead and make any type of assumption without seeing the existing plans first, what has been drawn up. I think that should be the first step. Rather than try to decide on how to, or what to, or anything else, or try to speculate on whatever, I'd want to see the plans first. I don't think that's too much to ask.
Well, if we're rating whether they need to be changed or not, we need to know what they are.
My point exactly.
Can we pull up, it's the same station as the Holton station, isn't that right?
It's a whole fire station, correct?
Can we pull up the Holton Fire Station just so we have an idea of what it looks like? We can just go on a tab on.
The plans were on the manager's big desk, big table. Are they still there, Peter? Or they were laid right on the,
Yeah, we had looked at it.
Recently?
yeah,
Oh, recently, okay.
well, I don't know since you've been, I don't know.
I
Maybe they were put away before you came, I don't know.
must be. I can look for them in that office if that's where they.
That's where they are.
need to be. Okay.
Or the big one that you'd want to look at is on a cardboard sheet.
Just for now, I'll just pull it up.
Yeah.
but Seeing the plans, I think obviously is important. I felt that we had reviewed it here already.
Two buildings in one, huh? Like a garage.
It's the
I'm gonna
main,
scale that.
Didn't Tom just say that the plans that they have, he didn't see anything that really needed to be changed in those plans?
Yes, he had said that.
Well, I had been in a conversation recently with an engineer that we work with regularly. And I asked him a generic question about plans that were produced 20+ years ago and how they would rate against today. And he didn't feel very strong that they would be suitable to fit in current environment. He should, we didn't talk about this specific project, but he shared that structurally a lot of it could probably, be used today, but there are a lot of aspects to it, that have changed over the years that may need to be updated. So that would be something I would keep in consideration.
Structurally or
Not structurally per se, but just the way, rulings change and codes change and things over the years. And so that there would be a need to have it reviewed.
Yeah.
And that would make sense. I mean, you've got OSHA, you've got a lot of different governmental agencies that would oversee what's in here that may need to go ahead, and the rulings or the requirements may have changed over 20 years. And you may have to modify or adapt to those changes. So this basically, it gives you, it looks nice. But I would like to see the actual site plans that were drawn up or whatever that the town has, so we could review and see what is or isn't there.
Well, I think we would have to have somebody who understands those
Yeah.
drawings fully as well to help us understand.
Or-
I don't think.
And
any of
I
us in
agree.
This room are qualified to really look at that.
Exactly.
And
I don't think
understand.
anybody on the state level that could do that for us.
those plans are TY Lin. TY Lin is the group that did that. We have a relationship now with TY Lin,
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
so
they could-
Okay.
I mean,
why don't we invite one of them to the next meeting?
I would think they would be more than willing to come and talk. I mean, they're right, there are code changes, okay? But the plans that you have don't take into all aspects of the code changes, but that's something that you would have to do anyway. You'd have to bring it up to meet the current codes because they change. I mean, I know a community not far from here that just built a new fire station. A two-story station without having their plans approved by the fire marshal's office. And the fire marshal's office has walked in and said, you can't use this station because it doesn't have an elevator, which is a new code. So bing, bang, boom.
Mhm.
We're, I don't know how many millions of dollars into a project. That
Well, I think the suggestion of having T.Y. Lin come and talk that through it with us is important. Obviously, I think personally, the structure of the building would be fine and probably remain the same. It would be changes to the code that I don't think would affect the structure, but hearing it from them would be important. But I would like to just take a second and just look at how it's laid out as well. Because you can see a significant amount of space in front of the building, on the side of the building. And you see the same with a lot of other newer fire departments that are built. And it's because you really do need a lot of room to turn around and maneuver before you're in the line of traffic. To be able to see and have enough room to see traffic and be able to pull out when it's, when it's safe to. And for them to see you ahead of time as well is extremely important. I've only done a few, emergency calls already with an ambulance, and I can tell you, as much as you have to see, ahead of you, and for them to see you, the best the situation will be. To have to just pull right into the road right after a door, it just makes absolutely no sense. No one can see you. You can't see everything either. And backing into it while there's traffic in the road is just completely unnecessary. It's something we should not set ourselves up for.
Not manageable.
No, it's not. So just looking at the way it's laid out in general, I think this is what we should go for, is having enough space to maneuver.
Tom, if I could ask, what's the square footage?
I don't know. I can't tell you.
You see, that would be something
Yeah.
that I think.
I
is
knew it,
important
but
to
I
know.
don't know it now.
If you're gonna try to decide on a good piece of property or whatever like that, knowing the square footage of the building you're
Yep.
actually trying to put on the property, I think is important to make the decision.
Sure. Plus the parking area.
If you remember when we talked about this one time, Dick had actually taken that footprint and set it on different lots
Mhm.
For this committee.
Yes.
I looked at those and there were some of them that it just didn't work. I mean, it will fit the footprint, correct, but in saying that, there's no room. You're fitting on the footprint without being able to move. If you notice there were 4 bays. There's 4 bays for trucks and ambulances, and then there's the wash bay is separate. That's what the bay is on the end. So you
Okay.
had a place where you, like now, when we wash a truck, then we have to move the trucks outside
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
get the drains working again, because the drains all plug up.
And for reference, you can see that these are 2 separate buildings. One's for police, one's for
Right.
fire. And this is where it pulls out in the back, and they have an additional probably 100 feet or so in the back.
So when we're talking, are we talking just fire or are we talking exact thing with police and fire? Are we talking a public safety building or are we talking a fire station? Because that right there is the footprint for a public safety building,
No,
fire and police.
So it's 2 buildings.
no, that's 2 separate buildings. If you remember, Mike, I don't know if you were on, you were, when we originally had the plans drawn up for this fire station. That's what happened to that fire station. That's why it was never built. Because we took that original plan, it was like $1.5 million to do,
I do remember that.
and then it went, we're gonna put police in there, we're gonna put this in there, and it went from 1.5 to almost 4 million. And it went through the mill gate, and the mill gate wasn't gonna.
It wasn't gonna happen.
The mill rumor stopped that project flat because they tried to add too much. They tried to build it too big, too much. This is just a fire station, Mike. The plans that we have are just a fire station.
Looks like Brittany pulled up the map there and did some measuring. It looks like the building's just over 9,000 square feet.
And I can tell you what the lot size is too.
With that, Brittany, is that just the fire lot or is that
Just
both?
the fire.
Just the
building
fire
itself,
building, okay.
yeah.
Fire building itself is
Yep.
measured just over 9,000 square feet.
And the entirety of all the tarmac for the fire area is,
And that's corner to corner of the pavement.
0.87 acres.
I'm in a meeting.
0.87 acres.
0.87 acres, all the
Oh,
paved part,
mean,
including the building.
So basically just this rectangle here,
is
Only the
all
pavement.
acre.
area.
And you said we're 9,000?
9,000 square feet for the building.
Thank you.
So what's the total length of that parking space?
From the entrance to the drive to the back of the lot, it's 105 yards.
The football field. Yeah, we've got no lot anywhere near that size in town, unless you took the 3 lots of Ton Motors there, not Ton Motors, but
K&M.
the hell Moore's lot.
Yeah, K&M.
Yeah, if you'd have to tear everything off it, you might just have that space.
It's certainly the length of a football field, and it's the width of one too.
Mhm. Well, I think, Mike, your suggestion of having, obviously the plans available is an important, important part of that. I felt like we had reviewed it already, but apparently it was just in Jake's office.
Page run completely through?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what I was saying before. If you took this type of building and you took it on the Morse line and saying that this is Penobscot Avenue, Central Street is here with access out here and here to get you out of there, with bays that run through the building, so you could go in either direction on that size lot. It's there. You've got two access and 2 entrance points to get you on 2 different streets. And what Tom brought up, which I think is interesting, is if you go back to the back of the building and here, over here would be Rustic Avenue School. There used to be a right of way that the town released, and it could be gotten back, that would allow you then to go ahead and access and go out this way. If we take the right of way back, which we can, to get you out on that street there, which gives you 3 access points off one building. Access and entrance points.
Mike, I'm pulling up, going off it on the show.
Sure.
But, and I don't know, Mike, that's why I'm asking this question. Can we take that back or do we sell that to them?
We can go by eminent domain and take it back.
Okay.
Or we can simply go and offer to buy the piece back from whoever we dealt it to, because it's not being used.
Are you saying this lot here?
Yes, here's K&M lot right here, okay? Now, here's Penobscot Avenue, Central Street, here's the, I'm reading this right. Here's Cotton Avenue School.
Rustic Avenue School.
Rustic Avenue School, sorry. So not only do you have access here by coming out on this road, you have access on this road. There is a right of way that the town had that parallels this parking lot and field right here that allows you to get out this way. Yeah.
Yeah, there's an opening in that gate, right? Well, there's a gate.
Yeah, there was a
right there.
gate there, and there was an opening, and the town always had that right of way.
It's a
There was an
street,
easement there for the town.
it's a street.
It could easily be adapted again. That would give you 3 points which you could get out: ambulance, fire. Plus, you're in the downtown location, centrally located for people to find you and you to find them. Walking availability, whatever, to the fire station, or if you make that a public safety building. It has a lot more advantages than what just you look at, plus the fact that the lot size itself, this way, running this way, is better than a football field long.
Where does it start, man? Is it corner to?
Corner to, right to the abutment of Bangor Savings parking lot. Bangor Savings owns none of this. This goes right to their parking lot where their drive-through is.
So it's this line all the way to the end of the corner.
Yep.
And then basically right at the edge of the lot here.
Yep.
Down to the street.
Exactly. And it's basically three town lots, which would give you plenty of room.
One-
Is,
One, One consideration we may not be talking about on this lot is that it's been a service station, a repair shop for quite a few decades.
Mhm.
And that soil testing probably ought to be done because we may end up with a brownfield situation.
And that depends, Louis, too, on what, same thing as what's going on with Arcataz. If you were to go ahead and have to dig into the ground, like for instance, if you had to put the idea of soil sampling, as you know, and Arcataz is going through this with buildings that they may put on there. If you have to drive down into the ground, you have to do soil samples. If you remain, there's a certain leeway of ground topsoil, that if you only go down so far,
You would have to drive into the ground. We're talking about having heavy equipment on it. It
Foundation,
needs
yeah.
to be significantly reinforced in the
Yep.
ground.
And that building also has a pit in it,
as long as you do not,
a pit.
Yeah, yeah. over
yeah,
the
a
years.
pit that would have to be filled and
When Brittany measured that lot, it is slightly larger than the concrete lot that we measured in Holton. This is 0.98 acres.
But if you're thinking about it being a whole public safety building, you have to go back and measure.
And-
We exactly copied the whole layout where it has a police station and fire department. Obviously, that's a bigger lot.
If you were-
In one.
And again, I would ask that if you were gonna have plans for something like that, and if you were gonna add that sort of situation, obviously it's gonna add expense. Having the designers here could maybe give you an idea of what would be the cost square foot for just a fire station, or the existing fire station as compared to fire and an abutting police presence there. Right now, I don't think, and I know I want to plan for the far future. I'm not feeling any thing in the community that's like, they're appreciating the service that's being provided by East Millinocket Police right now. And 9 out of 10 people seem to be very happy with the existing police force and the contract and whatever's there. So if you decide, or if the committee decides or whatever, not to go with the police presence on it, that could be fine too. The other thing about this is, and I've said this before, we've constructed nothing new in this town for decades, and I mean decades. Having a fire station in the downtown area, centrally located to the municipality, would give a real shot in the arm as far as the downtown revitalization, people's expectations, what they're seeing. I think it would do a lot for morale in the community to have it there rather than at the outskirts of town.
Tucked away where you can't see
And
it.
that's why I included here community field visibility.
Mhm.
So that is something that we can rank as a committee, the importance of that.
Yeah,
But for now, obviously, this first portion, we will need to invite T.Y. Lin or even just anyone with, that experience or background in engineering or design, architecture, that can give us a clear idea of what we would need to update on those existing plans and how it would fit on these properties.
I wonder if checking with Holden, what updates they've had to do to their station over the years might be helpful.
Mind checking on that. Are there any other portions of this that we might want to look into something, or any suggested changes on the way the ranking system is laid out?
Uh,
I had something. But, we'll be under,
what, Steve, exactly do you mean by utility availability?
So this is very similar to the changes in building plans in terms of what additional costs there might be. So for example, out of the Elks property, there would be a significant cost to bring
Sewers.
utilities to the fire station.
water.
Water,
Whereas
sewer,
If it were
Yeah, okay.
downtown, it's already there.
right,
Same thing with changes to building plans. If we had a huge, assuming the building plans are fine and not many things need to be changed. If we have a huge lot, we can assume that we don't really need to make any changes to the plan. If we're putting it on a different lot that requires it to be configured differently, it might require a change in plan.
Maybe changing the, like, changes to building plans, changing that to keeping building plans the same. Like, how important is it to keep building plans the same? That way, I think it's easier to understand them, right?
So
That
I'm
makes
okay
sense.
with that?
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
keeping building plans.
Yeah. Keeping existing building plans, yeah.
I
Like
would
a-
think,
Go
Oh,
ahead,
I
Gail.
would think the next step that I can see you kneeling is favoring is having all of you go over the plans and having the engineering people come up and weighing out what you would want to make different as far as codes. But when you look at these plans, make sure you have the advice of the engineering company to be at hand while you're going over this information. And as far as the water and sewer and everything being located at K&M, I think that's an excellent idea if the building, if the land is large enough to do what you want to do.
Thank you, Gilda. I think that does sum up what we're discussing. And if we can agree on the way that this is laid out, then we can go through this with the engineers when they're here.
I have no problem with the ranking system you've set up.
Just looking at the locations, are these locations that we agree on? There's this one at the end is the current storage unit. And that was brought up, I think you had brought that up.
yes, I did at one time.
Is that for sale?
I think the LaPierre family is looking to divest their, some of their holdings. So I don't think at the present time that they've actually put the property up for sale. But I think if somebody were to approach them, I think they would be interested in having the conversation. Because right now, my understanding is they're about half occupied as far as that is concerned, for their storage units. So it's one of those situations, it's a Bob Benjamin situation. The property is there. Now go ahead and talk to me and I'll give you a price.
Yeah, DM does have other, other properties in that that are for sale at the moment. So, you know, I'd be happy to contact her and see if we can get some information.
I'd also be curious to see if that property continues to run like it used to when it was a school and they had the field in the back that went down as far as toward where
Oh,
John Wiley is.
yeah, around,
If all that area is available, if that is all part of that same property, that basically L
yeah,
down there, that would certainly allow you to go ahead and have ample room
Yes,
to do.
Wentworth used to mark us out there.
that would be,
Is
that would be almost 3.5 acres.
And that would give you ample space to do, you know,
We could continue renting the storage spaces out, no lock storage, and you know, creates a revenue stream as well.
you know, that doesn't
Solar?
sound bad, actually. No, it really doesn't. It doesn't sound bad. The town needs to find new sources of revenue, and if we get into the storage building business, then we get into the storage building business. Or Tom has all kinds of storage units to store his equipment.
Yeah, right.
George, I get on the map.
Do you still have the more? Can you pull that back up?
More
I just want to show you something there, and I don't know. I will check when I go back. I'll go see Lorna and ask her about it.
I know Mama Moore is so anxious to get rid of that property.
Yes,
Patrick is scrambling like crazy because she's left it in Patrick's hands to try to
Yeah.
negotiate, because Paul has pulled out completely.
That's not gonna go.
But
under.
Mama Moore is so anxious to get rid of that property right now.
Talk with Pat, and I go talk to all.
All right, Tom?
see, on the lot to the left of the Moore building. That lot right there. I don't know, see where all those trees are?
Yeah,
I do not believe the Moore family owns that.
this whole
That-
lot,
I think they own just the paved part. I think those trees, that piece of land right there belongs to Wise Funeral, the old Wise Funeral Home.
so it ends right around here.
Right,
This right here is all that used to be an apartment building.
That's how we measured it. and it's-
Okay.
It's still 0.9 something acre.
This goes with this, but that's still that ample size.
Yeah. Yeah, so we measured it just below this tree line here, right against those cabins or
Yep.
whatever they are, sheds. that they're nothing around. That's
Okay.
Still just under an acre.
And it will give you some shade.
And this, Mike, is this the
What?
field you're talking about,
Yes.
or this too?
No,
Because I measured it,
The storage building, let's see.
Used to
where are
play
we?
baseball down
I measured it
Yeah.
here,
that's right.
Yeah.
George
I mean,
Wentworth.
even when Stearns High School.
they own all of that.
This too?
They used to take
Yep.
us over there to have gym class.
Mhm.
Let's
So we're
see.
looking at 4 acres then, if we're including.
All right, so this is the storage area here.
That's,
Okay.
well, that's the front
Yeah,
buildings.
And this goes all, this is my question. Does this property include all of this too? Because this used to be all one property that belonged to the school. And
Yes,
I think it was sold as such.
yes, because that's still all fenced.
Yeah.
And over where you are right now, Steve,
Yes,
that's where that's where he keeps his salt
okay.
stuff.
So I mean, this is a considerable amount of space, you know, over and above what is basically the storage area.
Yes, it is.
Again, and it's in a central location to the town, may not be on Main Street, but certainly a very well-traveled, well-seen, you know, central location as far as an intersection is concerned, that's very visible for the
It'll
community.
be a really short commute for you.
That's what I was thinking.
I could walk there.
Well, then we can get rid of the truck.
There's a revenue.
There we go.
Yeah, we'll sell the truck.
Then Boots would have to walk down there. You don't want that.
I wouldn't want to go
Okay.
fast.
The good thing about, and the other good thing about that location is accessibility.
Yes, I was gonna ask.
Accessibility is a lot better there than it is down in the Moore building. I will tell you that.
Yeah.
Even with the plans that we got in, that we're playing with the walkability and bikeability and stuff,
Mhm.
it's still a lot better.
Well, it strikes me too that you can get out to the Lake Road quickly, you can get out to the Brownville Road to get to the lakes too, which is part of our coverage.
So it would be good, Mike, do you know who to talk to see if they're interested in selling?
You do,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
You know, when you consider central location, and I understand the morality, not morality, but
No, there's some morality to it too.
the visibility of it.
Yeah, and the
you
morale.
know, For morale of the town. I can see that as one thing, but as far as, and maybe you can talk to this town a little bit, our town is so compact. I mean, it's not gonna make much difference if you're on the edge of the town or center of the town, your response time is gonna be minutes difference.
Our response times right now in proper Millinocket is 3 minutes. And I don't care where you put that building, Lou is absolutely right. Our response times aren't gonna, aren't gonna change. They're still gonna be about,
So-
the average out is gonna be about
So
3.
as far as,
In Millinocket proper.
yeah, as far as the safety aspect for the town. It's not much central location is not a.
But if you're talking,
But morality, the
Yeah.
view and the, oh, we're,
people in this
Changing.
town have the five
I
senses.
can't get off it.
Now, those five senses, they want to see it. They want to be able to touch it. Those are important to them. There's a visual thing, especially if you're asking people to pay a lot of money to put, whether you get grants or whatever, but you're paying a lot of money, there is a certain amount of, I gotta be able to, oh, look, drive by it every day or whatever, or something. It matters.
So my
Believe
cat's
me, it
always
matters.
going.
This area. I'm assuming the building would be right around here. And be kind of a long rectangle similar to the Holton. Just ask Brittany to measure this portion here, just to see how it would fit on that lot. So we can have enough room here and in the back, and perhaps do a road coming back here for other development. That's something that we wanted to do.
It's 1 acre.
One full acre.
There, okay, so that's more than enough room.
See, there used to be on the end down where Wiley's is, you used to be able to drive through there. There used to be a road there.
Right.
A gate and a road. Of course, that's all gone now.
Right here.
Yep.
Where it says John's Auto.
And then we closed the road that goes back behind, by Peter's Auto that went out to Spruce Street.
Right.
That,
Would we be able to do a road through here?
We go right through Dick's property.
Yeah.
I think we should talk about this domain right
Yeah,
here.
we're gonna take that building, put an access road there.
But again, it gives you a lot that can have multiple egresses to get in and out of.
And we'll put the horn right here, right?
Pointing downward.
Well, after being a part of a lot of conversations surrounding pedestrian traffic, especially in this intersection, I know that a lot of people have wanted to change what happens there
Yeah,
and the yield and stop and just going through, but every time it's discussed, it's set back to, we're not gonna change anything. But I feel like putting a fire station there, we would have to do something about that.
oh, that whole intersection is gonna have to change.
Yeah.
That would make
Right,
sense.
but we're in the process of doing that, in the process of talking about doing that anyway.
So the DOT is blocking it, making any changes there?
No,
No, they'd like us to make it better.
No, we have to take the results of that study and
Right.
suggestions to a public meeting
Yeah.
to speak about it.
because we've got, there's some,
More to come, but that'll take place.
there's some major issues at that intersection right there. So, it really something needs to be done there. But
Yeah, you have to
And if you
Brittany's
have-
absolutely right. When we talk about it,
access
then
right
people,
onto Cotton would be,
It just goes
you
back.
know,
and we can do those lights to where if there's an emergency, have a red light,
everybody stops, yeah.
and be able to pull right out.
You also would have the room that 20 years down the road or something, they want to put a police department back. You've got ample space to do whatever, once the fire station is here. If you wanted to go ahead and do something along here to allow them to go out or whatever, you have the room to do it. So it gives you the flexibility that you want, so you don't necessarily have to try to do it all at one time. So, yeah, I just think that this lot gives you the size that everybody seems to be looking for. The Moore's lot gives you the, like I say, the downtown presence, the Main Street presence, whatever. But if I had to rank, this would be my second choice, but for a lot of good reason.
Tom, if you wanted to do training, do you think this area back here would suffice for that?
absolutely. And the good thing about it, and the other thing is access to the trails.
Yeah,
We could actually
Yep.
take our snow sled right from there or our four-wheeler right from there and go.
Maybe-
And the other thing, I'm just gonna throw this out there, as we're looking ahead, if we're looking ahead anyway, you could actually put public works there too. You've got the land to do it. And that building, you need to do something with that building and
Public works. really?
Public Works building needs to be replaced.
Yes, it
It's down the
so
road.
I'm just throwing that, just,
Ooh.
you've got plenty of room there to do a lot of things. If you can even buy, I don't know that you can buy that, but
At one
I know
time-
she wants to
Yep.
sell the one out on Central Street. Out by where we're talking about
Mhm.
Peddler's Hill, but
So should we,
the Elks land.
the planning board weigh in on location? Is there anything in zoning?
I don't see the need for that.
No, I don't either. The zoning for something like this. It's not a business or whatever. The town has the right to go ahead. The other part of this,
Just curious if there's anything there already.
the other part of this is it's totally, the land itself, you don't have to worry about contamination. You don't have to worry about anything like that. There, other than the school, which was torn down, there's never been anything in that whole area in the back there other than just a place for kids to play ball. So it's not something that you have to worry about any type of thing like that. The land is pretty much as
No,
it's always been.
no, down in, right behind you. Where the fence is.
You mean
right
the
there.
Bragdon tanks?
The
that used to be
Bragdon,
there?
the Bragdon,
Storage tanks, yeah.
Yeah,
area, yes. That was Mango Hydro.
yeah.
That had a lot of,
PCB.
PCB,
Transformers,
transformers
yeah.
stored out in there. I don't think there's anything there, but it, that, and in where those, like that green building is, there used to be houses in there. There was a garage in there. There was a repair shop. There used to be houses. That used to be a street. That was School Street.
Before, yeah, but that was long time ago.
Well, we'll have to see if you're interested in selling, obviously.
Yeah.
And at what price.
Looking back at the matrix, I'm hearing maybe two different needs that we need to look at from locations, one being environmental remediation costs, and then another maybe being access to motorized trails. Especially. if we're
Well,
looking
no,
to-
that's just something, Brittany, that I threw, that is a good, the other places, you don't have that. That would be the only one that actually has that.
Yeah, you could go right out your back door, for God's sake, on the sled or on the ATV and go from there right onto the trails to be
Yeah.
able to monitor. Yeah.
Maybe with cost of land, I can write including environmental remediation.
And again, you're in a place where water and sewer hookup is,
Close.
yeah, I mean, you're relatively, you're right on top of it. So again, you don't have that extra expense of trying to, like other lots, to try to drive, to get water and sewer a certain distance.
So I would suggest adding another item to be ranked, I guess, is how important is it that it's connected to our airport? That hasn't come up in this conversation today,
Mm.
and it has come up in every other one. So we don't want to forget about that.
For now, I would do that.
Just go where it says et cetera. Right under utility availability.
We should, we really should
Yeah.
look at. I just think that
Access.
with the airport situation, I think for what they're looking for commercial flights and that coming in or whatever, having a hangar up there with a piece of equipment on site available. Now, I could be wrong, but I think if you had something, a hangar up there, whatever, with a piece of equipment on site that's available, it shows that you have a presence at the airport for fire. And I think that would alleviate the idea of having to relocate the fire station within an X amount of proximity to the airport.
Does the town have a building?
You know something,
Hangar.
putting a Quonset hut up there, for God's sake, with heat, wouldn't take much.
Well, then you also gotta consider additional equipment you're gonna have to have on site.
Again, Jeff mentioned the other day that getting used equipment, used fire equipment, the type that they use for airports is not hard to find, and a lot is available that is used equipment that could be purchased.
I mean, what do you know about that, Tom?
Surplus equipment, we could actually get that through the state grant. There's a state program to buy, to get that. You don't actually buy it, they give it to you. It's, it just counts on what's available when you're looking and where it is.
Does it fit the regulations for use, or are they? Is it
It'd have to be
old
retrofitted.
equipment because it's outdated to the point?
They have to replace their equipment every so many years, and they, a lot of places buy that specifically for that. Prescott, that's what Prescott has. They have a truck that came off Pease Air Force Base.
For the airport.
No, they have it at they have it
Yeah,
at
at
their
their
airport,
Yeah.
and then they man it. Anything that you get like that, Peter, we would have to have it tested and approved.
And would we need to have personnel based there? Or
No,
Only certain hours before and after the plane lands.
Mhm.
Yep.
So not full time.
but you gotta have staff to go there.
Yeah.
You gotta have staff available all the time.
We're
They
Right,
can't-
right.
we're training too.
5 flights, however many flights per day there would have to be juggling of people or justification to base somebody there.
Yeah, that'd be an idea.
Well, then
The
you'd
fire
have,
station
then it'd be
there.
a matter of the airport manager doing scheduling to be able to coordinate with the fire department to make sure that
Move
that would
people
be
back
an
and forth.
interdepartmental thing with you, the fire station and the airport manager to make sure that those schedulings can take, be in proximity to be able to best utilize the staff.
Yeah, once you get into something like that and you start offering those flights, you're gonna have to have availability of personnel at the fire station that can respond immediately. Not only during and after takeoffs and landings, but also if you get, once you open to something like that, then if you have an emergency flight coming in, which, we're right in the flight path for everything that goes to Europe. Otherwise, it'll be here. So once you get something like this in place, then you've got to have the availability because you may have a plane that has to come down here, which we've had before. But that's a doable thing. We did that years and years ago with Spruce Mudwork. We used to station a truck and an ambulance over there. They would go over at about 4:30 in the morning, and we'd be there from 4:30 till about noon, and we'd leave, and then we'd have to go back again around 5 o'clock. We'd be there from 5 to 10 while they were coming in and going out.
I would be fine with, the main things for me and why I brought this all to the committee is, if I were to rank this, the biggest things for me outside of cost, obviously, but the idea of it is to have it as a multi-use site where the town can have many options in how we can use the property. And also being an updated building where the equipment can be easily accessed, where there can be, a lot of future use for the building as well as things change. Those are the two big things for me. So ideally, this lot is for sale for a reasonable price, and we could put a garage basically out of the airport, specifically just to, host used equipment or whatever that would be required for air traffic in the future. Of course, it's not an immediate need. That could be used by staff when needed. And that should be a very inexpensive overall thing to put a basic garage out there just to hold some equipment. But the biggest thing for me is having enough land to where we have many options and how it can be used. We're dealing with housing issues. We have property owners like Bob Benjamin, who I hope is listening to this, who was completely disinterested in doing anything positive for the town, in my view. It's very self-interest based. And so irrational in terms of the cost of what he's trying to sell these lots for, and it prevents development. It's a considerable amount of our downtown property that cannot be developed because financially it's not feasible whatsoever.
Okay, so let's just try to focus on I guess the first step would be get a hold of Lapierre and see if there is a price. And what that price may be. Basically, I see this lot more than any of them checking off the majority of the boxes that, it has the size that would be out on the Elks land, basically. It has the location that I've been talking about for visibility and accessibility in the downtown area. It has easy access to water and sewer. It has room to expand for trainings or whatever. It just strikes me that if that lot could become available, if a price could be negotiated or whatever, that seems to be as good as you're gonna get. To me, it checks off most of what's up there as far as,
The only thing is just the cost of land, which we don't know.
right. So it doesn't hurt to ask.
And the airport.
No, I can give her a call.
Mhm.
see if we can talk about it.
We could do that simultaneously with getting TUI land
To review the
to
plan.
review plans and then come to a meeting and talk about them.
Yeah.
And we'll have more than enough to discuss at the next meeting, I think.
Yeah, and you know, and while we've got TY Lynn here, the good thing with having TY Lynn, they're involved in the other project, so they can tell us what their thoughts are on that intersection as well.
Oh, they're involved in the intersection too?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
so, yeah, they're working with.
Okay, so it's a rolling downhill, picks up moss type of thing, yeah.
So the goal of TY Lane is to invite them to actually do this during a meeting of the sustainability committee, not to look ahead of time. or
We'll look ahead of time
Provide. a
and
statement.
have enough knowledge of what we, before they come.
Well,
Send them
right,
the
sure.
plans, but to speak to it.
But to actually be present here.
Yes.
so.
That would be nice. And again, I really would like to see a printout or a copy of the existing plans for the fire station.
I'll look through the office and see what I can find. I
Did
haven't
you
seen
Send
those.
it, send it out.
There was one big set of plans in my office, but it was concerning the mill site.
Not that it really much, well, it matters. The fire station that you're talking about, Tom, the design, does it give an ample amount of space for the firemen who are working? In other words, is it going to be a type of thing that's going to be where there's going to be locker rooms, an area to sleep if they need to or whatever, and say showers or whatever type of situation?
Yes, some of the changes that will have to be made, it would just be rooms that we have already on the site would be
Oh,
making it so that we had women's and men's locker rooms.
I'm also thinking,
A lot of that.
that sort of situation there is a good recruiting tool if you're trying to recruit people to come work for the station, is a good working environment.
Mhm.
If they're looking to recruit firemen to come here or people to be part of our fire department, having a
New facility.
yeah, a nice area for them to, I would think would be a good recruiting tool,
And having everything under one roof,
and having everything under one
where you
roof.
don't have to go chasing stuff, that's a big recruit
Yep.
tool.
All right, so with those two items for next meeting, we'll be ready to do some ranking here.
Okay,
All right, so with that brings us to water quality issues. I've reached out to the state to see what options we might have as a municipality to do some water testing. I haven't heard back yet. So I will bring that up at the next meeting. And then lastly, the tri-town utility electricity efforts. We talked about this at the council level. I've spoken to both Medway and East now. Everyone's open to at least exploring what our options are. Medway seemed to be more interested in joining Eastern Maine Utility Co-op than doing our own. They had the impression that it would be run by the towns directly, and I reminded them kind of a similar structure of what we have for broadband, where we can represent the utility, but it would be a completely separate organization. If we did our own, that is, if we had our own tri-town utility. And another big difference that I pointed out is we already have all the clientele existing. Everyone uses power. And we already have all the infrastructure. the broadband, and the big issues there was, one, how do you ensure that everyone's gonna actually, or enough people will switch over to use that service instead of existing ones? Which is difficult to raise investment money for if you don't have, commitment from the end users. And two, there was no infrastructure bill yet. So there was that cost. So in terms of getting started, it's probably the most straightforward thing where everyone is on the grid and needs power. So it'd be very easy to finance. It would be a separate organization that would be responsible for getting the financing and running it. And it would have nothing to do, at least in terms of tax dollars, with raising taxes or affecting the tax base whatsoever. That was the intent for the broadband utility as well.
Now, are you talking, are you talking about just doing a power purchase agreement to bring energy to the area as a body? Or are you talking about trying to go ahead and getting the poles and the lines from Versant to, I mean, we looked into this.
Well, let me answer your question. How about
Okay.
that? So there's three options. One is, well, I guess four. One is we continue doing what we're doing. Two is Versant is willing to sell, and that allows us to join Eastern Maine if it's a reasonable price. The third is they're willing to sell or not, and we either way try and have our own utility. Or the fourth is we do something similar to what you just said, Mike, a power purchasing agreement, which is basically we can enroll the municipality in a umbrella, basically an umbrella system where everyone would automatically be rolled into a new supply cost. It would still be distributed by Versant, but the supply of electricity would be cheaper. It'd basically be putting out an RFP to see suppliers who are interested in supplying the whole town with electricity for a lower rate. And then it gives everyone the option to unenroll. So if people don't want to participate in it and just stick with Versant, they can do that. But it automatically, and that's only one approach, there's other ways of approaching it, but it would automatically enroll everyone within the town with a lower rate. That is probably the lowest hanging fruit, but it doesn't consider the high cost of distribution, which is the only way that utilities can legally make any money. Utilities in Maine only make money from the distribution costs. And that's one of the biggest areas where the rates are rising. It's not necessarily the cost of power itself. So it wouldn't solve that issue.
Okay, just back history. We chased this probably a dozen years ago. We went to the town of Madison to see what they had, because Madison has their own public utility. And we also went to Holton. Both of them have had the utilities for a 50, 60 years. So the this infrastructure was already there and they own it. They also own the poles and the lines. They didn't have to acquire them from anybody else. They owned them for themselves. They put them in, they had them. Okay. If you start from scratch, and we approached at that time Bangor Hydro about give us a price for the poles and the lines. Bangor Hydro's response to us at that time, that was 12 years ago, you can't afford it. There is hundreds of miles of lines, and to mention numerous poles that they own and they maintain, because the bulk of what they are, especially Versant now, they get their money through transmission, not through generation. So to give those up or to sell them now would be, at the height of this, it would be, I would be shocked if they would ever even consider it, let alone you know, come up with a price that a municipality like Millinocket could even afford. In saying that, that's why I asked about the PPA. If you were going to go ahead and try to do something like that, where at least you could take and get the best price for the production costs,
Supply.
yeah, the supply, then, you know, at least you're giving the users at least some kind of break being involved with it, because the transmission costs are gonna remain. And there's no guarantee that if we were to go ahead and get the power, get the lines and the poles, that we would be able to do the transmission for any less than what is being offered right now. You know, the supply, yes, we can do something about. Transmission, that may be a fixed cost that even we can't deal with, even if we owned it.
Well, I just want to make one clarification. Purchasing the existing infrastructure would not be something that the town itself or the towns collectively would be buying. It's not associated with our finances at all. It would be a separate entity that would get it financed. So if we're looking at buying the infrastructure, it'd be by a separate organization to which we would own it. We would own that organization, but it would be financed for a certain amount of time, 20 years, 30 years, something like that. And paying it off would come through the distribution cost over time. So it wouldn't be an upfront cost, and it wouldn't be a cost directly to the municipalities either. But that's if they're willing to sell still.
And that's the point. You know, there are certain times you give certain opportunities. The town had a chance to buy the water company at one time for $1 million. Years ago, and they said, oh, no, we don't want to get involved in that. And even though it was pointed out to them that this was going to be a very good investment and things like that, hindsight being 2020, they should have done it in a heartbeat, but they didn't.
Big mistake.
I don't see, but the water company approached Millinocket to buy it. I don't see Versant approaching Millinocket and say, hey, we're going to divest out of here. Would you like to buy the poles and the lines and things? You know, whether it be Millinocket or a separate entity company, you know, whatever. I just think that right now they're raking in too much money.
Jane?
Yeah, so Steve, so your conversations with East Millinocket and Medway, what do you think are our next steps? Like, as far as exploring our options?
Just that, seeing what our options would provide for us. So comparing and contrasting all of them. So Versant might think that a number would be crazy to offer to us, but we're also looking at a 30-year payback period if we get it financed. So it's not an immediate upfront cost, really. So it may not be crazy, and they may not have any offer at all. So if that's the case, at least we know that that's an option that we can eliminate. Then we can look at, and also we would eliminate Eastern Maine, joining them too, because they're not interested in joining anything to where we would hostilely take over these utility poles. You know, we'd be facing lawsuits forever if we took it by eminent domain. So that's really not an option either, I don't think. So then it comes down to either doing nothing or doing something like a power purchasing agreement for the whole town. But at least we would know what those options are, and
Is there a buy-in for the co-op?
I wouldn't know.
Usually, if you join a co-op of some type, there's usually some kind of upfront buy-in to get in, and then you kind of, but I don't know if that's the case at this point. A lot of them are like that. You know, you join the co-op, you buy into it, and then you start getting your rates or whatever, or your savings afterwards. A lot of questions.
Yeah. And I think the central piece to this is whether or not Versant will sell. And if they do, what that cost will be. And if they are, and even if it's an outrageous number to us now, similar to the water issue back then, it might seem crazy. But that's when I would want to bring in people who are experts in this, who can say, all right, well, this is what it would look like if we extended this cost over 30 years with financing. This is the money that it would take to operate, and and what you'd need to charge. Now we can start comparing that cost to what we're getting now. And then these are your options for where you can supply energy from, because that's the other component. We would have to enter into power purchasing agreements with suppliers of energy as well. So, there's a lot to figure out, but if they're unwilling to sell, it just makes it very easy to say, okay, well, that's not an option. So,
Right, so I guess an inquiry has to be made. All right.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that? All right. That's it.
Before we go, can I ask a question? And I think it falls under the sustainability because it was under sustainability at one time. Where are we as far as the engineering study for the airport terminal? Has that RFP gone out?
I just followed up with Peter on that today, actually. We
See, it's
don't,
a psychic thing.
Just dealing with this this morning.
we don't know if the interim manager had actually, even though we directed him to, had actually submitted our signed agreement with NBRC.
No, Jesus.
So we're looking into whether that happened or not. Did you hear back yet, Peter?
I haven't. I made contact with them this morning to verify whether or not that agreement was in place and if it needed to be edited and updated to my information. If it hadn't, then that includes a couple of cycles of reporting that hadn't been kept up as well.
Yes.
So we'll have to do some backtracking and make up there on a couple of.
Because I hadn't heard, the reason I ask is, again, I hadn't heard. We had discussed it, we had gone out, I knew the money had been awarded,
Yes.
thank you. But then the whole momentum thing seemed to gotten lost. And I just want to know if, A, we still have the money, which is important, but B, when are we going to expect to go ahead and get, or can we expect to get an RFP out for doing the engineering study on the construction of the building?
We can put out an RFP anytime we want. And I think we should do it as soon as we can because
would
costs
too.
are only going up.
Right.
We can't commit to anything until our agreement is signed, we're up to date on our progress reports, and, we've followed all the other steps to that whole process, but
I would very much like to go ahead and put the RFP out and get that engineering study started and taken care of. I think we need that to move forward. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if we're gonna go after any type of funding or anything to try to build that terminal, we're gonna need that engineering study.
yes,
Okay, so it just strikes me that it's the next step in the progression and it should be done sooner rather than later.
I agree. I can have something for us to review by next meeting.
That's all I got. That was my one pearl.
No, it's like you said, timing is everything. We were talking about that this morning. So I'm just looking for some responses back and then I'll.
I just want to make sure that before we do anything, we at least have the signed agreement, because that's
No.
everything.
I think
So-
that's very important.
Yeah. But that's why it's been delayed, is, Yeah.
All right, that seems to be a recurring theme,
yes, it is.
but that's in the past. Let's just go forward from there.
All right.
New administration, new energy, let's go forward from there.
Right, and I just do want to clarify out the gate, we don't know for certain. if
Mhm.
that
Yes.
was-
We do know
if
that,
that's the case or
that
not.
progress
I'm
reports were
looking-
not submitted, but we don't know about the agreement if it's signed or not.
Okay,
So,
all right. I just, like I say, Millinocket is famous for having all kinds, having plans for a fire station for 20 years. Millinocket's famous for having things we
Talked about.
talked about, we have something on paper, and it goes nowhere.
Yep.
I'd like to go ahead and see one project, whether it be the fire station, the airport terminal, whatever, go all the way through to completion.
Man, you get an equipment building.
Completely
some
agreed,
equipment.
Mike.
Can we get that quoted and put in the next article?
Seriously, I would. I mean, it's a dozen years of frustration.
Well, let's finish up the fire department project then, because that's
That's
something we
right.
started before.
Again, 20 years, and, you know,
I think it's over 20. I think it's closer to 30.
Oh,
It was in the
Yeah.
80s.
it's gotta be, it was in the eighties.
yeah, I mean, it's just a situation where I'd just like to see one project, one thing.
Nice.
Well, I think it'll
Finish.
line up with infrastructure.
I hear you.
funds really well.
Very good.
Anything from you, Gilda, before we sign off?
No, I think Rome wasn't built in a day, and if you make one step each day, you're gonna get there eventually.
Thank you.
Nice seeing you again, Gilda.
Nice seeing you. Take care.
I know.
Yeah, I'd like to see one